The most powerful navy in human history cannot open a 33-kilometer strait. Let that sink in for a moment. The President of the United States spent the last 24 hours on the phone, calling 7 countries, practically begging for military ships, and every single one of them said no. Germany's response was ice cold, and I quote, "This is not our war. That is where we are right now. And today we have a lot to cover. Iran just lost another top leader to an Israeli strike, and nobody knows who is running the country anymore. Diesel just hit $5 a gallon for the first time in years. Oil is back over 100. White House insiders are leaking to the press that the entire Iran attack was, their word, a mistake. And the really terrifying part, the one most people are not talking about, 320 million people around the world may face hunger because of what is happening in the Strait of Hormuz right now. Stay until the end, because that story alone should keep you up at night. If this channel helps you make sense of the chaos, hit that subscribe button and consider supporting us through Super Thanks. We spend hours researching and fact-checking every story to make sure you get the truth, not headlines. Your support keeps this work going. Now let us get into it. So here is what happened. Over the weekend, the president gave an 8-minute phone interview to the Financial Times, on Oscar night of all times. The entire country was watching the ceremony, and he was on the phone with a British newspaper. That alone tells you something about how desperate the situation has become. He warned that NATO faces, his words, a very dark future if allies do not help open the Hormuz Strait. He called the leaders of Britain, France, Japan, South Korea, China, Australia. He specifically asked for minesweepers. You know why? Because the United States decommissioned all of its mine-clearing vessels last year. All of them. The most expensive military in the world, and it has 0 minesweepers. Think about that for a second. Germany responded within hours. Not our war. Japan said no. Australia said no. The British Prime Minister is reportedly trying to negotiate some kind of symbolic presence in the Red Sea, not even near the strait. Italy might send a ship or two, but again, nowhere close to where it actually matters. And here is the kicker. Just 2 weeks ago, this same president was telling Europe it was a dying civilization, that NATO was a burden, that America did not need anybody. Now he is on the phone, and the word American media is using is not asking, it is begging. But that is only half the story. While Trump is scrambling for a coalition, Israel carried out what might be the most significant strike of this entire conflict. Overnight, they took out Ali Larijani, the secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, the man widely considered the actual leader of the country since the previous supreme leader was eliminated. Along with him, a senior commander of the Revolutionary Guards and over a dozen officials were hit in the same operation. Intelligence for the strike reportedly came from a joint American-Israeli effort. Now you might think this is good news. The regime is being dismantled, right? Well, here is the problem. The president of Iran, the moderate one, does not control the military forces. The people who did are gone, and the troops on the ground, they are still firing. Drones hit the U.S. Embassy compound in Baghdad. Hezbollah launched rockets at northern Israel. Iran fired a new ballistic missile type that apparently got through the Iron Dome. Nobody is in charge, and that makes things more dangerous, not less. You know what happened next? Iranian forces kept attacking Gulf states, even after their own officials publicly ordered them to stop. The foreign minister went on television saying, "We told our troops to stand down." Minutes later, rockets hit the very countries offering to mediate. The chain of command is broken, and when nobody's driving, the car does not just stop, it swerves. And while the military situation spirals, the economic damage is hitting home. Diesel prices in the United States just crossed $5 a gallon. First time since late the year before last. That is not just a number at the pump. Diesel powers every truck that delivers your groceries, every tractor that plants your food, every machine in every warehouse. When diesel goes up, everything goes up. And this is happening while interest rates are already elevated and inflation was supposed to be cooling down. Refineries cannot get enough crude oil because tankers are not moving through the strait. The few that do are hugging the Iranian coastline, moving on Tehran's terms. Iran is literally deciding who gets oil and who does not. Oil hit $106 a barrel, up 45% since the war started. Airlines are bleeding money. The energy secretary said it is temporary, promised gas could drop to $3 by summer. Honestly, does anyone believe that? The strait is still blocked. No coalition is forming, and the clock is ticking on something much bigger than fuel prices. If you are finding this important, do me a favor, hit that like button. It sounds small, but it tells the algorithm to show this to more people. And right now, more people need to hear this. Drop a comment with your thoughts. I read every single one. Now here's where it gets really interesting. This morning, Axios published a piece based on leaks from inside the White House, and the tone was unlike anything I've seen before. Sources close to the president are saying on the record through anonymous channels that the attack on Iran was a mistake. Those are not my words. That is coming from inside his own circle. The article described his decision-making style as intuition, impulsiveness, and improvisation. They planned for 4 to 6 weeks of intense airstrikes, then victory. We are approaching week 3, and the situation is worse than when they started. The defense secretary held a press conference today that was, honestly, bizarre. He was shouting at journalists, pointing fingers at specific reporters, demanding to know why they were not writing positive stories about the bombing campaign. This is not what confidence looks like. This is what panic looks like. When your own defense secretary is screaming at journalists to write nicer things about a war your own advisors are calling a mistake, that is not strength. That is desperation in a suit. And you know what the most telling detail was? He was yelling at Fox News reporters too. When you have lost Fox, you have lost the narrative. And now, the part I promised you. The one that should genuinely alarm you. 30% of the world's fertilizer trade passes through the Strait of Hormuz. Not oil. Fertilizer. The stuff that makes food grow. Transit of urea, the most common nitrogen fertilizer, has dropped by 97%. 97. The grain belt of the United States needs nitrogen by mid-April. India needs to prepare its harvest by May. Australia needs urea by June. And the timeline for building a coalition, clearing mines, and reopening the strait, months. Not weeks. Months. India already asked China for emergency fertilizer supplies. China said no, they have banned exports until August. Analysts are now estimating that between 300 and 320 million people are in zones where famine could become a real possibility if this is not resolved in the coming weeks. We are not talking about gas prices anymore. We are talking about whether people will eat. And the response from the most powerful country on earth? Calling allies who have already said no. The same allies it spent the last year insulting. The same allies it called a dying civilization. Now those allies hold the key, and they are in no rush to open the door. Every video on this channel starts with research, fact-checking, and a genuine effort to cut through the noise. If that matters to you, subscribing and sharing this video is the single best way to help us reach more people. Consider using Super Thanks if you want to go a step further. It directly supports the work behind every episode. Your comments fuel the conversation, and honestly, they fuel me too. Thank you for being here. This community is growing because of you, and I do not take that for granted. I will see you in the next one.